Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so thank you again, right? We want to thank the organizations, all the elected officials and agency officials that have helped us advocate for the continuation of this initiative. Every year, there's advocacy that goes behind ensuring that we have these dollars allocated for this initiative. And of course, now we are entering our 10th year, so we're super excited that this has been allowed to continue, right? And thank you, and please continue to advocate and tell your elected officials how wonderful and necessary this initiative is for your agencies and our communities. So the Communities of Color Nonprofit Stabilization Fund was established in 2014, right, to provide support that is not often funded, capacity building for infrastructural needs. As we saw in the recent years with the pandemic, the nonprofit sector has never stopped providing essential services to our community, providing food security, support, essential health supplies, and we continue to do so. So with CCNSF, what we're doing is creating access to funding that'll provide tools needed for your long-term sustainability. We also provide a space for networking where agencies can learn from one another and discuss best practices. So we're excited with this year's new cohort and hope that you really find even something as simple as connecting during the community briefing as useful to your organization.
And I think so. Some of you have likely already received an award. I know some of y'all are likely new, so want to review eligibility. So things to think about, make sure you're registered with the city. If you already have other city contracts from the city, you should be up to date and passport. Make sure you're registered with the state's Charities Bureau. You need to be a 501c3 for at least 2 years. I think this is especially important. We know during COVID, there were a lot of new 501c3s established. So you just need to make sure you have it for at least 2 years. You must be based in New York City. I know in the past we've had a few groups upstate join these briefings, but unfortunately, to be eligible, you need to be based in New York City. And 75% of the people you serve need to be in New York City too, because this is an initiative funded by City Council. You need to be a direct services organization. You need to serve communities with more than 51% or more of communities of color. You need to, do outreach or outreach to those communities as well. So a change from last year is that we have an increase in the organizational budget. So previously it was 150,000 to 2 million, but we are increasing it this year to 3 million. So that range is 150,000 to 3 million. We were able to get it increased because we know that that investment in, small and mid-sized organizations that especially stepped up during COVID is really necessary to continue serving communities of color that are really still dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic. So wanted to allow a greater number of organizations to apply to. And then when you're thinking about budget, I think we've gotten in the past some questions about like which budget this refers to, like if this is your current budget or what. So to find out your budget, look at your Form 990 or what was most recently filed. That's the budget that we're going to be using to determine eligibility. But if you have specific questions on that, just ask the administrating organization that you're applying to, and they'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So for eligibility too, we want to know that you're committed to equal employment opportunities, and that you're committed and have the capacity to provide culturally competent services. And then we know a lot of groups do a lot of work, do a lot of good work, and they use fiscal sponsors. But unfortunately, for this funding, we can't accept fiscal sponsors. I know in the past we've had groups who have attended briefings who were using fiscal sponsors, but have tried to move on from that to bring financial operations in-house to be eligible to. You can go to the next slide. So when we're thinking of all of the different capacity building projects, so we have management information systems design and development, financial management and planning, evaluation and outcome system development, leadership development, new program planning and development, strategy and organizational development, and collaboration and strategic alliances. I think if you're looking for really specific ideas or examples of projects, those are listed on our website, so you can refer to those too. I know in the past, some examples can look like, setting up financial systems, doing succession planning. I really want to emphasize, though, that this funding opportunity is for capacity building projects and not program implementation. And if you've applied in the past and you've received funding, you can't apply for a project that you've already received funding for. So, for example, if you've received funding in the past for leadership development, and let's say you want to continue doing leadership development and you have a completely different project that falls under that area, unfortunately, like you wouldn't be able to apply. You'll need to apply to a different area, like evaluation outcomes, system development, or something like that. And then when you're thinking about the project, you'll need to request up to 35,000 if your budget is between 150,000 and 500,000, and then request up to 45,000 if your budget is between 500,000 and $1 and to 3 million or 3.5 million. You can go to the next slide. And then our applications are all online. I know if you've received funding in the past, we used to do like paper applications, but everything's online at this website, ccnsffund.org/apply. And just make sure that when you do go to this website and you submit an application, just submit to one administrating partner only. You can go to the next slide.
Good afternoon to everyone that good morning to everyone that I haven't spoken to this morning. Our city council vetting process. Your organization will be vetted. After you're chosen, you'll be vetted by our city council. There are several entities that you have to go through. Lexis Comprehensive Business Report Search, its related entities, principals, tax warrants, liens, workers' compensation violations, and addresses. So what I suggest that you do is that you look online or look up anything about your organization. And if you see anything negative, then you need to fix it. We have the Lexis News article search, searching for negative news about your organization, IRS database search, tax exempt status, New York State Department of Corporations database, New York State tax warrant notice database. Some organizations that we get, they have tax warrants, they have no knowledge of it. The New York City Department of Buildings, location, occupancy status. New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, group, child care services, daycare services, inspections. Review of use of funds to ensure that monies are not used in any prohibited manner. Now, that's a good one because I've had an organization to take the funding and actually they didn't use it for the right purposes. So those things happen. Conflict of interest form, charities exemption if applicable, and authorization from review. Next screen. Okay, the council vetting process for consultants. Your consultants can be chosen by basically anyone that you feel like you want to have consultant. But they have to be vetted as well. Once you approve, and we ask that you try to choose your consultant before you submit your application, but if you don't, it's okay. They'll be vetted by Lexis Comprehensive Business Report Search, related entities, principals, tax warrants, liens, workers' compensation violations, and addresses. Lexis News article search, of course, searching for negative news, registration with the State Attorney General's Office, Google and social media, conflict of interest forms. Next screen.
Now on to the budget.
Okay.
So the budget is extremely important, right? We want to make sure that you provide a budget that matches the award caps, right? Which are 35,000 with a budget up to 500,000, and then 45K is the cap if your budget is between 500 and 3.5 million. We understand some projects may cost more, but we do want you to stick to the caps because that is what provides the best opportunity for a just assessment, right, on behalf of the allocations committee that will be reviewing. So you see salary expenses, they are not to exceed 30% of the award that's being requested, right? And this does include full-time or part-time employees. The employees in the narrative need to be justified. So why exactly are you putting the executive director a portion of their salary? That's going to be explained in the narrative in the application. There are two possibilities, right? So existing staff have to be delivering training or professional development to enhance the capacity, or they're participating in training and other staff have to cover the programs. So those are the two situations in which you would put staffers under this initiative. Fringe benefits are capped at 15% of that salary line. So it's not 15% of the 35,000 that you're requesting, it is 15% of the 30% cap, right? Consultants are capped at 60% of the amount that is requested, the total award that you are requesting. And then you have, computer hardware software capped at 30%, and there is no capital or overhead allowed in this initiative. Next slide. Here you have a sample that is based on a request for $35,000, right? And it is using the caps as were described. 10,500 would be 30% of the $35,000, right? And then you have the 1,500 that is a reflection of 15% of the 10,500. 21,000 is the 60% consultant line cap, and then OTPS is what remains. Next slide. Here we have a short description for each category, right? So salaries and wages, it's letting you know, reminder, 30% of the total amount that is being requested is the cap. Fringe benefits, we give you examples because there will be a portion where you have to be specific as to what are the fringe benefits that you're asking to be covered. Is it disability? Is it medical? Is it life? Is it, disability, etc. The consultant line, again, capped at 60%. They will be going through a vetting, right, from the city. We do recommend that you do your own vetting as well prior to, just to make sure that the consultant matches your company's culture, right, and that they are going to be providing the expertise that you're actually seeking. So the consultant cannot be someone that holds an email address issued by the organization. Just want to make that note. It will be elaborated on later. But the consultant is outside expertise that is not existing already within your organization. They are bringing in this expertise and helping you in this capacity building journey, right? And then OTPS can include anything that is, seminars, workshops, space rental, right? If you have to do some sort of a retreat, and everything does have to match the project scope, right? So it cannot be expenses that we don't know how they relate to the project that you are proposing. Next slide. This is an example of how the details should be presented, right, in the application. We'll ask for the amount that you're allocating, as well as a narrative to explain those numbers. For the staff members, right, how much will be allocated to each one, and what is their function within this project. The same will occur for the fringe, right? We want to know what are the fringe details that you're covering. The consultant, who are they? Or is it consultants? Who are they? What is their expertise? And then OTPS. And be sure to provide the detail in OTPS because, again, as you present the budget, everything has to make sense and relate to the project that is being proposed. And no overhead, no capital cost. Next. Yvonne?
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. So take note, consultants. Consultants are chosen with the following considerations. Consultants cannot be existing staff or a current, former, intern, or family relatives of staff or board members. Consultants cannot have an email address issued by the organization, meaning if I'm at New NYUL and my consultant says Racine at NYUL, I cannot use that person as a consultant. They have to have a separate entity altogether. They cannot be former or existing board members or anyone that's in your organization. Consultants has been properly interviewed, references checked. So you must interview your consultant, make sure they align with your initiative, and make sure you check your references. The budget allocation for profit and nonprofit consultants are capped at 60% of the total award. So if your award is $45,000, then your consultant fee is capped at $27,000. If your budget is $35,000, then your consultant is capped at $21,000. Now, you don't have to use the whole thing for consultants, but you can't go over those amounts. All proposed consultants must submit current documentation and be current in the current year. So, for example, if you used a consultant 2 years ago and you had them vetted and they were accepted, you cannot use them again until they are re-vetted. Every consultant must be vetted in the present year. Next screen. Please identify consultants when submitting your proposal and attach the following documents. Your consultant must have a resume, a EIN or social security number, clear and precise contact information. A conflict of interest form must be signed, client list, and the description of consultant appropriateness rationale for choosing the consultant. Now, also make sure you have a consultant that you can reach on contact. We have some people that choose a consultant way in another state or whatever, another country sometimes. Please have a consultant that you can confer and converse with at any time. Next screen.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Good morning again, folks. So just to give you a sense of what our timeline looks like, apologies for this little graphic. So as you're well aware, so yes, as of last week, our RFA officially went live, and I know everyone is starting to think and plan for the application and the potential project. So yes, glad that's gotten off the ground. In addition to today's community briefing, we will have 2 more community briefings, one on Friday, November 3rd, and the third one being on Wednesday, November 8th. If you go on the CCNSF website, you will see under the tab for community briefings that you can register also for those briefings. We will upload the recordings for each of these briefings and let folks know if they want to share this amongst their networks when it's ready and finalized. Now, the most important date that we strongly recommend everyone putting on their calendars, smartphones, calendar widgets. Please note that the applications are due November 17th at 5 p.m. Any application received after that will be considered ineligible. So after we receive the applications, CACF, New York Urban League, and Hispanic Federation, we are going to have our allocation committee reviews taking place in December. So the allocation panel, who consist of nonprofit and philanthropy professionals, they will be the ones reviewing and evaluating the applications. And when we convene in December, we will collectively, so each each of the grant administrators respectively will be deciding deciding on the applications that we will move forward with, and also decide also the award amounts. So just to give you a sense of what goes on in the allocation committee. And after that, then we will send for those that we will move forward with, we will send that list to DYCD for them to look at and to officially give us the green light in terms of moving forward and sending the decision status to all our applicants. So again, just continue to be on the lookout for announcements from the from us, the NSF partners, regarding decision status. But also we acknowledge that this can be a waiting game. So just continue to reach out to us if you have questions, or if you just want to check in and see how things are going. Again, we're happy to keep you updated. So from there, in terms of the orientation and webinar, that will be taking place between January and February. January 1st is when officially CCNSF gets started. And mind you, this is a 6-month project timeline. So from January through the end of June, that's when the project must be completed, the funds must be entirely spent, and there will be no extensions accepted after June 30th. There will be an interim report that we will ask folks to submit somewhere in April. So we will be sending announcements beforehand to give folks a sense of what the interim report entails, and more importantly, the templates so that folks can start preparing and planning accordingly. After the projects have been completed, after the spending has been done entirely by June 30th, folks will be required to submit a final report as well. That'll be in July, and we will again be in touch well in advance so that folks can, just like for the interim report, also plan and prepare for the final report. Last but not least, we will offer capacity building training sessions. Right now, the NSF partners, we are still figuring out the dates and topics for the capacity building trainings that we'd like to offer. Once that's finalized, we will definitely send it out to all of you. And these training sessions are open to both applicants and awardees. So even though we may not move forward with your project in this round, we still want to invite you to participate and engage in the capacity building trainings. And also, just if folks may not be aware, DYCD also offers capacity building trainings. So if there may be a training session that we may not offer, but something you may see through DYCD, you are more than welcome to attend that. And just as a quick FYI, the required amount of training sessions that awardees are supposed to attend as per the CCNSF award stipulations is 3. So in terms of our resources, just again, as you're familiarizing yourself with CCNSF, please continue to check the CCNSF website, which is constantly and consistently updated, definitely to just help you answer any immediate questions or thoughts as you're working through your application. Definitely on the website, there's also an FAQ tab where, again, any of the immediate questions or thoughts you're thinking of will be listed there. In terms of a consultant list, so we have an updated consultant list, and for those who are requesting a consultant list, we are happy to share that with you individually if needed. And of course, the budget samples, what you've seen in this presentation, and also what you also may see on the website. Again, those are available to you. And again, we we, the NSF partners, are available to answer any of those immediate questions you have. And just as mentioned earlier this morning, so this recording, once it's finalized, we will upload it onto the CCNSF website so that you can share this amongst your networks. And lastly, again, please, any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, anything immediate as you're working with the CCNSF application, please reach out to any of the to the specific contact folks for each NSF partner that's listed. Again, we can also copy and paste this and share this in the chat box if folks need this right away. But again, we're here for you. We want to help you. We want to make sure that you're able to submit this in time. And again, just be able to clarify any additional thoughts or questions you may be thinking of even after today's briefing. So with that being said, we can just dive right into Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing these slides so that folks we can all be able to ask questions.
All right, so we've been taking notes of questions that have come through in the chat box, and we're going to back it up to the first one that we saw come through, which was how much of a grantee's award funding could be allocated to partnering with a capacity building partner. I think that was answered, but just to uplift that again, you can allocate up to 60% of your total award to your consultant partner. The next question that came through is, can you say more about how you define direct service? That's a really good question. And I invite partners to also chime into this in case I get this wrong, but we don't have a specific definition for direct service. It's basically services that are provided to your constituents to provide the community you're serving. That cannot be covered with this award. This award is specifically for capacity building to develop your own internal structures, and that can look like a variety of things. I think the way that we've really wanted this award to be is for organizations to build up your infrastructure, to build up your capacity to provide those services. I think the differentiation there is we just cannot define, like we can't provide services, or we can't fund you to provide services to the community in a direct way. If that, I invite other partners to chime in if you want to on this question. And Julia, if you have a more specific question, you can also add it to the chat and we'll address it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's the idea that you provide a direct service to the community and not that you're a think tank, right? I think that's like the opposite extreme that shows more clearly who we are not able to fund.
Okay, thank you. And again, if you have a follow-up on that, please add it to the chat. Sheena asks, will we have access to a list of potential consultants? Yes, we can provide that as a resource to you. Reach out to the contact from the organization that you are planning to submit an application to. One of the things we wanted to really flag about this consultant list is that they're not vetted. So the folks on this list they don't have endorsement yet. They still have to go through DYCD vetting, but we can definitely provide you a list of consultants to consider. Karina asks, in the past, each capacity building consultant had a total cap of 75K. What is the cap this year? And is this going to be managed, tracked by the intermediaries? So the CCNSF partners. Yes, there is a cap. The cap is 75K for nonprofit consultants and 50K for for-profit consultants. And yes, we, the partners, will be tracking that. So just a suggestion around that, if you know there's a consultant that you want to use and you know that that consultant is popular, I would suggest you locking that in with your application as soon as possible, because it's usually a first come, first serve. Louise, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, has two questions. Can a former staff member be hired as your consultant? The answer to that question is yes, a former staff member can be hired as your consultant. They just cannot be part of those stipulations that we went over. So they can't have an email address. They can't be like a family member. They can't have like that kind of conflict of interest. They can't be a current staff member. It's totally fine to have a former staff member as long as they're not still part of your organization and don't have that organizational email address. And what does the consultant need to do to register with the state attorney general, assuming they're not already registered? That is a great question that I personally don't have the answer to. Does any of the partners have an answer readily available to that question?
Sure, we're not requiring that the consultant is registered with the Attorney General's office, the organization, right? We need to be registered as 501c3s with the Charities Bureau, but the consultant does not have to be, right? So the consultant can be an individual or it can be a firm. We have consultants that are already MWBEs. We have some that are not yet registered as MWBEs. There's going to be a vetting, right, of this individual and or entity that is being presented, but being registered with the AG's office is not a requirement for the consultants.
Thank you. So the next question comes from Ryan. Do we need to have a consultant in order to apply for this grant? And the way I'm interpreting this is, do you need to have a consultant like already engaged to apply for this grant? And the answer is no at this point. You do have to have a consultant in mind by the time you submit the application. And you have to have an idea of the project they're going to do, but you don't have to have one specifically engaged. And I also want to flag that the consultants, again, will be vetted. So it might be a good idea to have a second consultant in mind in case DOICD doesn't approve your first consultant. Next question, as a consultant, if you're potentially working with multiple CCNSF grantees, is there a cap on the total funding a single capacity building partner could receive across these projects as a whole? Yes, 75K for nonprofits and 50K for for-profits. Young asks, if we hire a company, not an individual, to consult on information database systems, do we still provide a resume of the consultants? That's a really good question.
It is. It is how I can answer that one.
Okay, throwing it over to you, Yvonne.
Although you hire a corporation or organization to do your consulting, there still must be a person there has to be a lead person or someone, and they have to be vetted by DYCD. I've sent in organizations and they send it back. No, you have to have an individual that can be vetted for that organization. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for fielding that one. So yes, yes, we need an individual and you need an individual resume to go through vetting. Next question comes through from Haley. Will funds be available through reimbursement through DYCD again? The way I'm interpreting that is what type of grant this is and who the funder is. So the funder is DYCD. It's being contracted through DYCD. And yes, this grant is a reimbursable one. So you will have to spend the money and submit reimbursement to the agency that you are or the partner that you are subcontracted through. And that's how you will receive payments. If I didn't interpret that question in that way, or I interpreted a different question you were asking, just add it to the chat again and we'll address it. All right, Sophia asked, can someone give an example of capacity building versus not capacity building project? Because every organization does this differently. That is a great question, and it goes really into nuance, particularly because capacity building is really specific to the organization. So I think some of the things that we've seen folks spend their money on for this is board development has been really popular. Building out your financial systems. We've seen a lot building out that infrastructure if you want to grow your organization, making sure that's there, hiring a consultant to really talk you through that. Building out databases is a really, that's a really popular one that we see a lot. For example, if you have a tech database currently and you want to expand it, you want to integrate it, you want to do something that's more complex, hiring somebody to do that. We have seen Not capacity building projects, I think I can define is just providing like actual direct services to folks. That is not a capacity building project. I invite partners, I think, to chime into this, just based on what you've seen as well, capacity building versus not capacity building.
I think another version of that is just asking for funds to hire staff, right? So this is not to provide you capacity to do your programmatic work. This is capacity building as it relates to addressing your infrastructural needs, right? So if you have a project, but you really need to hire a program manager, right? Like, so this is not that type of capacity. If that makes sense.
All right, and I see Kim gave a really good answer in the chat as well, and I'm just going to uplift that. You can hire a consultant to help do strategic planning or team retreat, and you can't use it to cover the salary of a team member, which is basically what Amika said. If you need any additional clarification, please enter it into the chat and we'll uplift that. We have the next question that says, does this mean all funds will be awarded by January 1st, 2024? As much as we'd like to promise you that, we cannot, because there is a component of DYCD that does the vetting, and their decision is what goes. So we don't have a specific timeline for when that decision drops. It usually drops around January, sometimes before, sometimes during, but we will, as soon as we hear about the vetted organizations and the clearances, we'll communicate who gets the award to you. I see different interpretations of that. So Kim also says it's a reimbursement. So yes, it is a reimbursable grant. You'll have to spend the funds, request reimbursement. Let me know if I interpreted it in the way you were asking. And Haley provides some additional feedback, which we will definitely take into consideration for future RFPs. So thank you for that. What is meant by contact the organization that you're planning to submit an application to? Don't we submit to CCNSF? Good question, Lori. And I think that was a direct message to me, but I'm just uplifting it here. So that means you can only submit an application to one of us. There's 3 partners in the CCNSF program. CACF is one of them. Hispanic Federation is another. New York Urban League is another. And AAF is our technical partner. So depending on the population you serve, that will dictate who to submit an application to. There's additional information around considerations for that on the CCNSF website, but you're applying to a specific organization. So if you serve the Asian community, you'll apply to CACF. If the majority of the folks that you work with are Hispanic, you'll submit to Hispanic Federation Foundation, sorry. And if you serve the Black community primarily, you'll submit it to New York Urban League. So you're only submitting to one. If you submit to multiple partners, that will disqualify your application. So do not do that. Can a control group be consultants in an evaluation system development project? That's a really good question. And I think the answer to that is yes. Well, it depends on what you're evaluating. So I think you would need a little bit more information, but Hengil, we work together. So reach out to us and we can talk through a little bit more based on the project you're thinking of. So that could be potentially yes, but we would need additional information. Ryan asked, if we have a DBA with the same EIN number, but running a whole different organization, are we able to apply for 2 different grants?
Nope.
I don't think so. If it's one EIN, that's one organization. Sorry. Sophia asked, is it all via reimbursement? The answer to that is yes. Thanks, Haley, again. Yes, we'll definitely clarify the point about reimbursement in the RFP so folks are aware and can plan that. Are there any changes to the application itself from last year, i.e. questions, word limits, attachments, etc.? No, there's no changes as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure there's not, but one of the partners correct me if I'm wrong. The biggest change from Yeah, go ahead.
I think that the only basic change is that the eligibility, the award was that the organization could not have a budget over 2 million. But this year, the budget can be up to 3.5 million. That's our basic change. That's it.
Yep, that's exactly what I wanted to uplift. That's the budget change. It used to be
Yes.
2, and now we're at 3.5. So it's
Right.
a little bit more eligibility for folks with larger budgets. Karina asks, can the work be extended beyond June 30th if we are not able to complete the work before? Unfortunately not. This is discretionary funding, so it ends with the city fiscal year, which is June 30th. Yeah, sorry, that's a pretty hard deadline. Ryan, can religious organizations apply for these grants, meaning a church? I believe the answer to that is yes, as long as it's a 501c3 and meets all of the other requirements of eligibility around the organization specifically. All right, I think we've reached the end of questions. I'm going to leave it for a little bit, just in case some last minute ones come in. But I hope folks found this useful. If as you apply, you have our contact information, so feel free to reach out to us at any time with any additional questions that come up. We've been doing this for a number of years, 10 years this year, which is like quite the milestone. And it's really exciting. So definitely reach out and tap into the resources that are available, including the CCNSF website and all of the folks that we provided contact information for. So I think this feels like a stopping place. I don't see anything come through. I'm going to open it up to, oh, no, Young coming in with a 3 last minute questions. So is there a billing cycle, monthly, et cetera, or will the expenses be reimbursed after completing the whole project? That's a great question. I can answer on behalf of CACF, but we have an optional reimbursement date, sort of in the middle of the project. But I'm not sure about the other organizations. How do folks do reimbursement cycles?
It's with the reporting, right? So we have the advance that goes with contract signatures. Once we have all that documentation, we can put in for the advance. Then there is a mid-year report, the interim. There's if you spent money by then you can submit for reimbursement, but you do have to demonstrate that you were able to spend the advance and then some, right? So that you can get the difference. And then you have your final report. All reporting structures require programmatic and financial, and it's tied to potential reimbursement if you show that you have expenses.
I also wanted to add that because this is also a grant that is tied to DYCD and the city council, that we're also kind of at the mercy of the city council and DYCD's reimbursement cycle. So it's not necessarily as simple as if you submit your report, you will get the grants, because New York Urban League and the other organization within CCNSF are also waiting to receive the funds from DYCD. So it's, yeah, I would say that it's not necessarily as cut and dry as like just submitting the report and receiving the grants. That's why I would summarize this as a reimbursement grant that you may receive in advance for. That is helpful, but I wouldn't count that you would be able to receive all of the money within the grant cycle to use. So you kind of have to have the money to be able to spend it.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Yvonne, for both of that. And thank you, Amirka, for providing the oversight or the answer. Does CCNSF provide a contract advance at all? Yes, we do at subcontract execution, pending receipt of funds on our end, our being the subcontracting organization that your award is with. And the third question, would you clarify the vetting process of the consultant? do consultants need to contact DYCD for the vetting process while applying for the grant with us, or can this be done afterward? That's a really good question. So the way that happens is the partners collect all of the consultants that you folks are using. We submit that to DYCD, so your consultants, and you don't have to do anything. That is something that the partners will manage and be on DYCD about. You just have to submit your consultant, you have to submit all of the documentations, and we'll manage getting those vetted with DYCD. And question, will other community briefings cover the same content as this meeting? Yes, they will. Questions might be different, but the general, the presentation will be the same. All right, any other questions? Appreciate everybody for taking the time to ask them. These are really detailed and really thoughtful. So thank you for thinking through with us and the feedback as well that folks have provided in the chat. Okay, this feels like a good stopping point. I see a lot of thank yous. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you again, everybody, for attending. If you have any questions, again, reach out to us, tap into all of the resources that we can provide. We're happy to do so. Again, if you want to sit in on more community briefings and listen to questions, we have 2 more coming up. Definitely not needed, but if you want to, you're free to. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to throw it over to our partners if anybody wants to say any last words before we close out.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you for attending and look forward to working with you.
Awesome. And thank you for working with us to kick off fiscal year 24. We're really excited to kick off year 10. So Francis dropped all of our contact information. And with that, I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Again, reach out to us if you need it. This recording will be posted on the website. Thanks everybody so much.